Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-hosts, including Jeff Mack and Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Ethan Milrod, Go-To, Daley Tipton, Evolution Energy Partners, David Jackowitz, Evolution Financial Group, and Mitchell Lightman, Exact Payroll. Jeff, can you give us a rundown on who we have on the show today, please?
Sure. We have a great show planned, Herb. We have Regina Hairston, President and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce. Suchit Bachalli is the CEO of a company called Unilog. Cicalese is Managing Partner of Alloy Silverstein. And Larry McMichael is Chairman of Dilworth Paxson.
Let's get to know our first guest, Regina Hairston, who happens to be the CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce. Regina, what is the African American Chamber of Commerce?
We promote the voice and the vision of small Black businesses with over 400 members in the region.
Perfect. What is, where you're from originally? How many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
Sure. So I'm from Callens, Virginia. I have 2 siblings, and I'm the middle child.
All righty. Jeffrey?
So you mentioned, Regina, at an early age, your parents got divorced. What was it like growing up primarily with your mom, and what was her influence on you?
Sure. So I lived with my grandparents and my mom and my siblings. And for me, that was great. I always had someone taking care of me. I always had stability and a lot of love and quality time.
And what did your mom teach you, really, that you take to work every day?
So my mom was always in someone else's business, always trying to help someone. And that's who I've become, someone always trying to connect someone to resources and opportunity.
Drew?
Regina, when did that first express itself at a young age, being the ringleader?
Sure. So my siblings were always, we were always together, always doing something. And I was always making sure my brother had everything that he needed.
And what would your friends tell us about you?
My friends always call me when they have a vision. They call me for a solution for that vision to operationalize it.
And what was the impact of giving that advice at a young age to what you do today?
So that's led me to promoting other people's vision, always curating a space for other people's voices.
Perfect. David?
So you mentioned about being outside, always being busy. How do you think that has impacted your career?
Absolutely. So I'm not productive unless I have a lot of things to accomplish. If I'm sitting still, then I'm just not doing anything at all.
Shannon?
Regina, in the green room, you mentioned that you did everything with your grandfather. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So my grandfather took me everywhere. If it was building a building on the property, I grew up on a farm, or farming, growing vegetables or something of that nature, or going to buy moonshine. I was always with my grandfather.
What did you learn from him that you carry with you today?
So my love language is quality time. If you want to be with me, you better be showing me some quality time, because that's what I see love as.
What do you mean by quality time? What are you talking about?
Just spending time with me. There's no fuss, no frills, just time, whether we're going to the market, whether we're sitting in the house watching TV together, or whether we're doing something major, just quality time.
How does that lend itself to your being the head of this African American Chamber of Commerce?
Absolutely. So I'm always accessible. You can get me on the first ring. You can get a response from me in an email, and I'm always attentive to someone's situation or their dreams or vision. I'm always going to be there, and I'm always going to be attentive.
You've got a lot of empathy. You really care about people, don't you?
I do. I really care about people. I care about their stories, and it's lended itself in me being a lobbyist, being an events planner, being a fundraiser, and now promoting the voice and the vision of our small businesses.
Mitchell?
Regina, how did being a big sister and being having to care for your younger sibling affect what you do today?
Sure. So I always help chart my brother's path, and now he is a successful entrepreneur himself. He runs a thrift store, but he got there through an education in IT, and his big sister sort of dressing him and telling him what to do.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Ethan Milrod.
Regina, did you spend a lot of time with friends growing up? I think you mentioned earlier that friends were important to you. What were you guys up to?
Absolutely. So my friends and I, we were always charting new paths, trying to figure out what was the newest restaurants or teaching ourselves how to behave at restaurants. And my best friend back then, she's still my best friend today, and we have the exact same career.
What does that tell us about you having these long-lasting friendships, Regina?
I'm loyal, I'm dedicated, and I love stability and consistency.
Mm-hmm. David?
Regina, back in the green room, you were talking about your upbringing at Lent. How has that impacted who you are today and how you've gotten involved in your career?
Sure. So I like to say I collect relationships and friends everywhere I go. I have a deep interest in people, and that came from just growing up on a small farm. I'm supportive, and I just love to learn new things. And I think that helps me with the members that I support. I'm empathetic to their story, and I want to help them create what it is that they're looking to create.
Mm-hmm. Which other co-hosts have any other questions?
Your high school growing up in Callens, you said it was like a lab for social issues. Tell us about the environment in your high school.
So my high school was very diverse. The senior class was about 50-50, 50% white, 50% black. So we got to sort of deal with social justice issues and really not run from them, but have the opportunity in a safe environment to sort of sort things out.
And what do you bring from that experience to the chamber?
From that, I'm very open-minded. I've had a lot of experience with a diverse group of folks, and that helps me push for diversity and inclusion.
Ethan, what are you thinking? Or Drew?
Yeah, I was just curious, Regina, what advice you would give to a young lady that maybe, had some hurdles in front of her. What would you tell them?
Absolutely. I would say don't give up on your dreams. Be resilient. You get to cry for 1 hour, and then you have to stop and figure out what's next.
And what's the impact of that lesson on the chamber and your members?
So when you look at COVID-19 and you think about how businesses had to close, of course, people stood still and thought, oh, my goodness, how am I going to survive? But we were able to rebound from that and think about how we're going to pivot and not only survive, but thrive. So with our members, we make sure they have resources that allow them to move through this pandemic.
Just get it done, I guess.
Just get it done.
Mm-hmm. Ethan, Daly, what are you guys thinking?
Regina, you recently became the president and CEO of the chamber, right?
Yes.
Why do you think it was that you were selected? Why do you think they chose you?
I think they chose me because I'm passionate, I'm empathetic, and I'm resourceful, and I have a spirit of just getting it done. So I can operationalize a vision, but I also can have a vision.
What is that vision, and what's your hope for the chamber moving forward into the future?
Absolutely. So my vision is to grow our membership and also to provide back-end services for our members. One thing that we learned from this pandemic is that our small businesses are very vulnerable, and we have to provide those support systems for them. And so I hope to grow their capacity while growing the chamber's capacity.
So you're like the big sister at the chamber, aren't you?
I am the big sister.
It really is a personality trait of yours, trying to look out for everybody, trying to make sure that they're dressed correctly, and trying to cross-pollinate everybody's interests. The good thing is you're the head of the chamber. This is 9 to 5 for you, correct?
This is 24/7 for me. My brother says when he introduces me, he says, this is my sister and she's a production. And that is absolutely correct. It doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. This is who I am 24/7. I'm constantly thinking about how I can help businesses.
So do you get paid extra money for working these extra hours?
I do not get paid extra money, but I get paid in I can't even think of the word, satisfaction.
Satisfaction from what? What are you talking about?
Satisfaction that I am able to help someone to create their vision.
Mm-hmm. So you really enjoy your job. You're built for your job. You're built to really help these business owners understand what resources are available and how you can help them. What's the website address for this organization known as the African American Chamber of Commerce?
aachamber.com.
Let me have that one more time.
It's aachamber.com.
We've been speaking with Regina Hairston, President and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, please stick around. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break.
You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors.
We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce Suchit Bachalli, who is the CEO of an organization known as Unilog. What is Unilog?
Unilog is a tech company, software, enterprise SaaS. We help mid-size wholesale distribution and manufacturing, small format hardware retail stores to really set up e-commerce for them.
How large or how small is this business, and how did you get a job with it?
Well, I was one of the original team that founded the company. We're currently just over 600 employees globally.
And what was your role on the founding team?
I've always been a career salesperson, and when I joined Unilog, selling was my thing. So I started off as a BDR.
And where are you from originally? And how many brothers and sisters? Where are you in the pecking order?
I was born and raised in India, and I have one younger sister, and she's 6 years younger than me.
Drew?
You mentioned that your foundation was based in sales. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I dropped out of college at age 17. Big story there, but we won't get into it tonight. When I started, my first job was a door-to-door salesman selling shrink-wrap software on the streets of Mumbai.
What was the one lesson you remember from going door-to-door selling?
Never take no for an answer. You can keep knocking on doors and eventually someone will open.
And what's the impact of that lesson on Unilog?
I think we've been a company that was bootstrapped for 20 years, and we grew it from nothing to over 600 people. And it shows in how my career transformed over the years, and the same story continues for Unilog.
David?
Growing up in India, how did that impact your business today and who you are today as spending your whole childhood there?
Grew up fairly resource constrained. India was going through a lot of transformation as I was growing up in the 80s, and from power to water to basic amenities, it was just challenging time in the life of the nation. My generation grew up knowing how to manage resources effectively, and I learned a lot of those skills and apply them to Unilog in my work at Unilog every day.
Daly?
So what you were talking about growing up, you were talking about mentors that you had. You had one specific. Tell us about Professor Rushi.
Professor Rushi was a transformative influence in my life. He took me under his wing at the age of 17, 18, and taught me everything I know about communication, leadership, verbal, nonverbal communication. how to sell, how to set up marketing campaigns. I mean, everything that I know today as a professional, I learned from him at his feet. So it was a great learning experience for me.
So he really taught you more than just being your professor. He was more like a life lesson. So how do you apply that? How do you apply those things that he taught you?
He was a life coach before I knew what a life coach was, and he was everything that you could expect in a mentor. And he gave me a lot of his time, a lot of his empathy, and taught me everything around just being a good person and a good leader. And I carry that to this day.
Ethan?
Suchit, when you were selling door to door, did you obviously interacted with clients? What were some of the lessons that you learned selling door to door to your customers?
I think the one thing that I learned in my interactions with customers is that we have to spend time listening to them. And when you, instead of, a lot of salespeople talk a lot and speak a lot, I think selling is more about listening than it is about talking. And I think if you give customers the opportunity to talk about what their goals, ambitions, desires are, it becomes a very powerful way of engaging with them.
These listening skills, these empathetic listening skills, are those things that you do today at Unilog?
Every day, whether it's working with my team members, whether it's working with our partners, whether it's working with our customers, I think as a leader, listening is the pathway to learning, and you have to be actively listening.
But you're the CEO, though. You don't have to do that, right? You don't have to listen.
All the people, I have to do it the most because I think that's how you can be a better leader. You cannot lead people if you're not listening and understanding and being empathetic to what's happening in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
Suchit, we were talking earlier about your sister. She's very special to you. What's her name?
Shruti is my sister's name, and she is very, very special to me. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the age of 20. And for the last 16 years has managed to live a thriving life while living with that condition, and has truly inspired me to look at life very differently. And everything that she has done by example has been a way for me to understand how to live life better, more fully.
In your experience with her, what do you take to work as the CEO of Unilog that your experience with her has brought to you?
Being able to, take any setback that you might get as an opportunity to basically not allow it to define you. The way you define yourself and the way you build your legacy is by what you do and not what happened to you.
Shannon?
You mentioned that at a very young age, when you were growing up in India, you and your family faced a lot of challenges. I'm curious, what was your outlet during those hard times?
Sure, and absolutely. Thanks, Shannon. I mean, my family, we grew up in a different time in India. India is a different country now. But my outlet was reading. I was fortunate to go to a boarding school. My outlet was my friends. I was never into sports, but definitely a computer science lab and the science lab was my refuge.
And in the green room, you mentioned that these friends of yours almost became family. How does that relate to the way you're building your team today?
Yes, there's no doubt that my closest relationships today are with my friends, both from boarding school and even later in life. And I use the same feelings for how I build my team. I think our team is very collegial at Unilog, and the reason for that is because we want to make sure that we're hiring not just the brightest talent, but people that are a cultural fit.
Mm-hmm. Mitchell? Oh, you're on mute, Mitchell. Mitchell, you're on mute.
Oh, how about now? Okay. Suchit, can you tell us about an experience you had when you were younger that gave you your first inkling that you had a pretty strong drive for success?
Yes. I think most of my friends will tell you that it may seem outwardly that I'm very nonchalant or quiet or doing other things. But deep down, I'm a very, very driven person. One of the things we did, I think, when I was in 8th grade was we built a visual interface knowledge game on a software programming language called GW Basics. And we literally had to write hundreds of lines of code. And we wrote all night long for months on end, a friend and I, and we put it together. And the only reason we did it was because we wanted to make sure we showed our computer science teacher that it could be done. And so there's that drive just continues to this day.
And how old were you when you did that?
So 8th grade, I'm going to say 14.
Wow. And how does that affect what you're doing today in your leadership position with Unilog?
Yeah, we have Unilog as a company has I think it embodies the spirit of our founding team. We have a real quiet but very, very strong drive to be impactful for our customers. Our purpose is to elevate our customers and our employees and the communities that we live in. And that's just that is in everything we do. It permeates into every person. It permeates into every relationship. It permeates into every customer contract.
Mm-hmm. So you really have a very, very deep commitment, focus, persistence, discipline. That's part of who you are, and that's spread into the business. It's one of the reasons you've been able to bootstrap a business to 600 people.
That's correct, and that's a primary driver for us is to show that it can be done.
And the website address for Unilog is?
Unilogcorp.com, Unilog, UNILOG, CORP.com.
We've been speaking with Suchit Bachalli, who is the CEO of Unilog, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Back in a moment, right after this quick break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce Ren Cicalese, managing partner of an organization known as Alloy Silverstein. What is Alloy Silverstein, Ren?
Alloy Silverstein is a regional accounting firm, financial services firm, and a payroll company of about 50 people in the Philadelphia region.
All righty. And where you're from originally, and how many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
Originally from South Philly, moved to Blackwood, New Jersey when I was 4 years old. I'm the oldest of three. I have a brother and a sister.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
So, Ren, we were talking earlier. Something happened at age 9 in your life. What was that, and what was the impact of that event?
My dad, when I was 9, my dad was 32 and passed away, and it was probably the most significant event of my life. At the time, my dad died in January, and in May, I had to come up with the money for the Mother's Day present, and I'm still coming up with money to this day.
And how has that impacted your professional career, Ren?
Well, I think I've worked really hard because of the situation and had to be a role model for my brother and my sister. And my mother taught me how to work really hard, and I've been working hard ever since. I'm still the first person to come into the office.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Drew.
Yeah, Ren, can you tell us a little about your mom and what she meant to you?
Oh, my mom's still everything. My mom is 89 years old. And during the pandemic, we've only seen her 2 or 3 times. But my mom has worked her whole life. When my father passed away, she was in mourning for 1 year and 1 day. And on that day, she went back to work, and she's hustled to keep us together our entire life.
What did that mean to you to see your mom work hard like that?
It taught us a lot of things. It taught us how to work hard. But it also made us be concerned that nobody should work that hard their entire life. My mom retired when she was about 79 years old.
And Ren, when you're faced with a tough decision at the office, what do you hear your mom whispering in your ear?
Well, it's really not my mom. It's the fact that the toughest thing that ever happened to me when I was 9, and I've kicked its butt. So there's really nothing I can't handle, because when you handle the death of a parent at age 9, there's nothing that what life can give you that you can't already handle.
Mm-hmm. Ethan?
And yeah, you told us in the green room that your grandfather told you at the time that you were the man of the house and that you had to step up. Tell us about, how did you make money?
Any way I could. I would, at that time, there was recyclable bottles. So you would basically take bottles and turn them in for 5 cents a bottle. I started selling TV guides when I was probably 8, 10 years old. My first official job was working at a car wash when I was 13 for $1 an hour and any spare change you could find in the back seat of the car.
So what did that teach you? What was your relationship with money? And didn't you tell us something about a Life magazine article that really hit home for you? Can you share with the listening audience about that?
Sure. Yeah, when my dad was sick in 1965, 1966, Dr. Christian Bernard was doing transplants in South Africa. There was a Life magazine article. And I was always concerned, and I still am, that if perhaps we were a family of wealth, which we weren't, whether my father would be able to afford to have an operation and might be alive today. So I've always driven myself. I've always been driven that I don't want something to happen to somebody when we did not have enough money to make sure they got the proper care.
Ren, what does that mean to your clients today?
Well, a lot of times people always think that something happens to somebody else down the street. It's the other family that happens. And when I sit there and talk to my clients and they start talking that it's not something that's going to happen, when I tell them my story and say I was the other family and I see how it affects, it just hits home better and it makes them realize it can happen to anybody.
David?
So you had mentioned about playing a lot of sports growing up. How do you think that affected or impacted, how you run your business today?
Well, my mom always felt that if we played sports, we would be too tired to get in trouble when we got home. So we played all kinds of sports, and it taught me how to have a team approach, how to work hard, how to work even harder when you think you have gotten everything out of you that you can. And it's allowed me to play baseball through college. I still play competitive sports, and I actually still represent professional athletes to this day.
Mm-hmm. Daly?
So, talk about baseball. You said you played baseball through college. What position did you play on the team?
I was a second baseman, pitcher, but my senior year, I actually played 8 positions in the game at one time or another, except catcher, and I was backup catcher at one time. So I think what it's proven is you have to do whatever it takes for the benefit of the team, and in this case, it's either your team's your family or your team's your business.
So you played every position on the team. What about at your company? How many positions have you played there?
Well, I originally started as a tax season temp, and I became a partner. After 2 weeks, they hired me full time. I became a partner when I was 29, and now I own 90% of the accounting firm, 100% of the financial services firm, and 100% of the payroll company. And whenever anybody says anything to me or criticizes what I do, I say, hey, I'm just a temp. What do you want me to say?
You played every position all the way through.
Yep.
Miss Shannon.
And what did you learn from your father that you carry with you today?
Well, my father was an early riser. He was always, my dad drove a truck for Pepsi, and he was a driver salesman. And my father worked really hard. That's what I remember. When I was only 9, what I remember is he went to work early, and he got home early, and family was everything.
And family was everything. What's that have to do with how you're building this organization, Alloy Silverstein?
Well, I refer to everybody as the Alloy family. And, work is work. But if anybody has a personal situation, they know I have time for them. During the pandemic, I've been really careful in making sure nothing happens to anybody on my watch. We've been remote since March 20th, and I'm not going to go in until everybody's safe.
Wow.
Ren, when you were playing baseball, did your mom ever get to come see you play?
Every game. Every game. At one time, my mom had I had my brother, my sister, and I playing on the same night at 3 different fields. So my mom would come and watch 2 innings of each of us to play. And my mom taught us time management, to be honest.
What did that mean to you to be on the field, look over and see your hardworking mom there for you?
Well, it made me realize how hard she was at keeping the family together, and it taught me what work ethic is.
Mm-hmm. Mitchell,
think you bring that lesson to work every day with you?
Absolutely. I work really hard. I'm still the first one in the office, and I'm usually the last one to leave when we're in the office.
Hey, Ren, when you mentioned in the green room when you were young that a lot of responsibility and discipline was thrown on your plate. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think what happened was when my father passed away, we got the news. The first thing I did was run up to my bedroom closet and shut the door. And my grandfather came up and told me in broken English, "You stop crying now. You're the man of the house." And I took that very, very seriously at 9 years old. And it taught me how I grew up. That's simple.
Were there certain chores and tasks around the house you had to take over pretty quickly?
Every morning we would get up. There would be a list of things that we had to do and get done before we were go out to play. And I'm 64 years old, and I still start my day with a list of things that I have to do and get finished before I can go out and play.
So that had a natural effect on your success at Alloy Silverstein.
Yes, my life revolves around list and getting things off the list.
What's the benefit to your clients of this experience you had at the age of 9?
I think it allows them to realize it does happen to somebody else. Things do happen bad. Not everything has a happy ending. But you have to turn lemons into lemonade. You have to work really hard.
Mm-hmm. What's the website address for this organization known as Alloy Silverstein?
AlloySilverstein.com.
How do you spell that?
AlloySilverstein.com.
We've been speaking with Ren Cicalese, managing partner of Alloy Silverstein here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Stick around. Don't go away. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break.
Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure.
Back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce Larry McMichael, who's the chairman of a well-respected law firm known as Dilworth Paxson. Larry, what is Dilworth Paxson? What are you guys doing?
Dilworth is one of Philadelphia's oldest and best-known law firms.
Mm-hmm. How large or small is the firm? And tell us about where you're from and how many brothers and sisters.
Sure. Dilworth is about 100 lawyers located in Center City, Philadelphia, and in South Jersey. Mm-hmm. Small offices in a few other places. I grew up in Malvern, Chester County, oldest of three, a brother and a sister.
All righty. Jeffrey?
So Larry, you were mentioning in the green room that at age 10, your parents got divorced. Who raised you?
Well, that was a team effort. My mother was working full-time. She was a third grade teacher. And my grandmother moved in with us, and my aunt later moved in with us, and the three of them raised the three of us.
So what was the impact of three strong women raising you as a young boy?
Well,
and how does that
they were pretty tough. We were a challenge. The three of us were a challenge, particularly my brother and me. But I think it enabled me to see the value of teamwork, and that's critical in terms of what I do today. I mean,
you mentioned your grandmother. Your grandmother was a strong personality. How did she impact your professional life?
Well, she was very tough. My grandmother was physically strong. She was very large, and she was a terrifying person when she got angry. She was 100% Irish, daughter of a coal miner, and grew up in Punxsutawney. And you did not want to get on her wrong side.
You have a piece of that going into work every day?
I certainly do.
Mm-hmm. Drew?
Larry, what lesson? What's the one lesson you remember most from your mother?
Diligence. My mother was a very hard worker. I mean, not only was she, doing a lot around the house and raising kids, teaching school full time. She earned a master's degree at night when I was growing up, and she was always working hard, and worked after dinner every night. And,
what did that mean to you to see your mom working so hard every day?
Well, I actually admired it. I thought it was she knew what she wanted to do, and she was getting there, and I follow in her footsteps. I do the same thing.
Like what the lesson from watching that hard work is today at Dilworth.
Well, I work pretty hard, and I expect the people who work with us at Dilworth to work hard.
Mm-hmm. Ethan?
Larry, didn't you say earlier in the green room that around the neighborhood you were the ringleader?
I was somewhat of a ringleader, yeah. In the I'd say in the early '60s, when we were kids.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we just organizing games, getting people together. It's hard to have fun by yourself. You need a group of people to do something. Whether you're playing kickball on the streets or you're going out in the woods and looking for frogs or whatever else we were doing as kids.
Why do you think it was that your friends chose you to be the ringleader?
I don't know. Maybe I chose myself. Somebody had to do it.
You just took charge? Is that what you do today as the chairman at Dilworth Paxson?
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it. Somebody has to do it, and it's for now it's me.
Mm-hmm. Daly?
So we talked about some influences you had. You talked about one special person in junior high school. Tell us about Mr. Lawrence.
Mr. Lawrence was my phys ed teacher, and I had no athletic ability whatsoever, and very little strength of any sort. He was my personal drill sergeant. He taught me that whatever it was I could not do, if I tried hard enough and kept trying, eventually I could do it. He taught me to overcome fear, climbing ropes and things like that. I didn't really like heights at the time. But, he just get up there, climb all the way up, and then lower yourself down. You'll be fine. A kid with no physical ability, yet their biggest influence was a gym teacher. And so, what did you learn from him that when you come to the office every day? What I learned was if you can't do something, break it into pieces and start with a little bit at a time, and keep doing it until you do that piece well, and then you just build on it, and eventually you'll get done what you need to get done.
Mm-hmm. Mitchell? Oh, you're on mute.
Larry, you mentioned in the green room that one of your bigger challenges growing up into adulthood was public speaking. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was terrified of it. I used to be horribly afraid that the teacher would call me in class and I would say something stupid and nobody would like me or everybody would make fun of me. And I just decided I needed to get over that. And I got into student politics. I ran for student body president. I won. I had to speak in front of a large group of students. I did that regularly, and you do it long enough, you get over it, and you stop being afraid of it, and you start practicing and get better every time.
And how does that help you successfully manage the law firm today?
Well, I have to deal with partners, and they're my family. But like all families, they present challenges, and you have to get them all, moving in the same direction and working toward the same goal. And there's a level of inspiration that's necessary to be able to do that, and a level of example that's necessary.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Jackowitz?
So you mentioned back in the green room about the fear of speaking, and you went from completely being afraid of it to being in front of the courtroom all the time. How did you make that complete shift?
Just by doing it. Simply just by doing it. I mean, I looked for opportunities to speak in public when I was a kid. And I continue doing that, and I continue doing it today. I used to teach law. I've done programs like this, and I practice my businesses in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm. Shannon?
Larry, how young were you when you started making money?
I was 13. My first job was as a flagman on a construction site. Of course, I couldn't drive. I just waved a flag so other people who were driving wouldn't run into each other.
And in the green room, you mentioned that the money that you earned, you would give to your mom. Most 13-year-olds wouldn't do that. Tell us more about that. Why did you do it?
Well, I wanted to go to college, and we needed to save money for college, and it was the right thing to do. I didn't have a bank account when I was 13 years old. I had to do something with it. So my mother was in charge. She was in charge of everything. Still is, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
She's 91 years old and doing great.
Mm-hmm. Do you think your mom surprised you turned out as successful as you have as chairman of Dilworth Paxson, a very well-respected law firm here in Philadelphia?
No, my mother's not the least bit surprised. She expected of me, and she'd be disappointed if I didn't do it.
Wow. How about your grandmother and your aunt?
I think they're cheering me on up in heaven.
Mm-hmm. So these are three ladies that really influenced you.
Absolutely, and they still do. Mm-hmm. I'm a very lucky guy. I've always been lucky. I've had another one of your guests had a great support system.
Mm-hmm. What would
your kids tell us about you?
I work too hard.
Mm-hmm.
I work too hard. And, I'm not good with the love language of quality time. I learned that from Miss Hairston. I need to work on that. That's my next project because.
What lessons have your kids taught you?
Patience. Kids all require patience, and you have to be loving, and you have to guide them. You can't let them guide you. They need parents. They need guidance, just like I did, and I was lucky.
You mentioned your one son's in the Navy, currently on a submarine. What's that mean to you?
I'm enormously proud of him. Worried about him, as anytime you have a kid in the military, you're always a little worried.
Mm-hmm. And what do you bring to work every day that particular son taught you?
Well, you can do what you think you can't do. He was a political science major in college. He's now a nuclear officer on a submarine. He graduated with no quantitative background whatsoever. He did it all on his own after he got out. Went back to school, studied physics, went into the Navy, went through the Navy nuclear program, and did it very successfully.
Mm-hmm. Last question. Who's got it?
Larry, the people that know you call you a problem solver and you have common sense. Where did that trait come from?
That would have come from my grandmother and my aunt, principally. They were not educated women, but they were very practical. They're very smart. And they learned life the hard way in the early 1900s, through a depression, through a couple of wars, and they were very, very practical.
Mm-hmm. Last question.
You think the women in your life, the strong women in your life, prepared you to be a litigator in the courtroom?
Yes, they did. That's a job where you can't be afraid. You have to. Sometimes you've got tough clients and you've got hard cases, and you just gotta plow through them. The best you can.
What is the website address for this law firm called Dilworth Paxson?
It's dilworthlaw.com.
We've been speaking with Larry McMichael, chairman of Dilworth Paxson, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Jeffrey, can you give us a rundown on who else we've had the opportunity of hanging out with?
Sure, Herb. A great show. We started with Regina Hairston, president and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce. Suchit Bachalli is the CEO of Unilog. Reynold Cicalese is the managing partner of Alloy Silverstein. And Larry McMichael, chairman of Dilworth Paxson.
I'd like to thank my co-hosts, including Jeff Mack and Shannon Lane from Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon from Hanlon, Ethan Milrod, GoTo, Daley Tipton, Evolution Energy Partners, David Jackowitz, Evolution Financial Group, and Mitchell Lightman, Exact Payroll, for giving me a hand structuring the questions to help you providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.